Hey, how are you today? This is Josh Patrick, and you're at Cracking the Cash Flow Code. And you're in for a treat today. My guest today is Grant Baldwin from the Speakers Lab. I was asking Grant before we started the show how he found me, and he says he doesn't know, but I'm really glad he did because you're in for a treat. We're going to talk about speaking and why you might want to be a speaker, even though it's the last thing in the world you want to do. So let's bring Grant on and we'll start the conversation. Hey, Grant, how are you today?
Doing quite well, Josh. Thanks for letting me hang out with you.
My pleasure. I'm a blue collar business owner and I'm running a plumbing company or electrical contracting company and
Mhm.
very happy with what I'm doing. And you come in and you say, you really need to speak. Why would I say yes?
Good question. So, well, one is I don't know that you necessarily have to have speaking. I think sometimes people assume that all right, you're the in my case I'm a speaking guy, therefore everyone has to be a speaker. Not necessarily, but I do think speaking can be a very valuable resource for a lot of people in a lot of different businesses, including blue collar business owners. So, there's a couple different ways that speaking could provide value. One is going to be just your building your reputation within the marketplace. So, blue collar businesses are typically going to be more locally based, regionally based type of businesses. And whether we like it or not, people always, whenever we see a speaker, we oftentimes ascribe some level of credibility, of expertise, of recognition to that person. So if you are at some type of, let's say, home show or trade show of some form, and there's people from the community, and you're doing a presentation on here are three things to do in 2023 to decrease your electrical bill, or to make sure that these three most common things aren't happening with your plumbing in your house, or the things that we most commonly see. It can be really good from just a reputation building standpoint. It can also be really good from a lead gen standpoint. So oftentimes for speakers, if they have some type of product or service that they offer on the back end, they may go speak, and then an audience is going, hey, everything you just talked about, you described, like, that's great. I'm not going to go do that in my home or business or whatever it may be. Can I hire you to come help implement or apply that thing? And so, yeah, I think that the speaking can still be really good in those situations as well.
And there's something else that you might want to think about, or the listeners might want to think about, which is, it's pretty easy today to get pretty good video of a speech.
Hmm.
And you can take that speech and you can chop it up and stick it on your website to answer questions that your potential customers might have about your services, which is in my opinion, another really good reason to speak. The other reason I think it's really good to speak, I used to have a food service business, and as soon as a manager got promoted into a supervisory position, we made him go into Toastmasters.
Hmm.
And the reason we did that was if you can speak to 25 or 50 people successfully, you're much better one on one.
Mm.
And most of the blue collar business owners I know, especially in the construction world, the owner of the business is the one that's out there selling the jobs.
Yep.
And if you can be a good speaker to 50 people, think about how good you are with one. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And even to that degree that, one of the challenges, if you're just primarily, and again, a lot of this depends on the nature of your business, but if you're primarily doing one-on-one sales, that speaking can allow you to do one-to-many sales. So in some type of workshop or training where it maybe allows you to pick up several clients at once, or that or several customers at once, it's going to be way more efficient and effective from a sales mechanism standpoint than just doing a one-to-one. But to your point, Josh, I would totally agree that being a speaker forces you to kind of be clear and concise and hone in on your message, so that whenever you are communicating in a one-on-one type setting, it definitely makes you more effective.
So when there may be some of us who sit there and say, okay, great, I'm going to do some speaking and I get invited to speak at trade shows for my industry. It's not going to get me a whole lot of business, but it does potentially open up an alternate source of income for me. And
Hmm.
frankly, having multiple streams of income helps make life a lot safer when it comes to economics for yourself. So you're an expert at getting booked and paid. So why
Hmm.
don't we talk about that a little bit? What are the one or two or three things that you need to know if you want to get booked and paid as a speaker?
Yeah. So within the Speaker Lab, our training company for speakers, is we teach what we call the Speaker Success Roadmap. It makes the acronym SPEAK, SPEAK. And so maybe real quick, what we could do is I could kind of just walk through that, and we can kind of jump in
That'd be
wherever you
great.
want.
I would love that if you would.
But the S stands for selecting a problem to solve. Select a problem to solve. So you got to get clear on two things. One is, who do you speak to? Number two is, what problem do you solve for that audience? Now, this is a big mistake that's not exclusive to just speakers, but it's a challenge that business owners of any kind have, because oftentimes what we want to do is we want to spread the net as far and wide as possible. And so, who do I speak to? I don't know. I speak to people. I speak to humans. My message is for everybody. And what do I speak about? I don't know. What do you want me to speak about? I can speak about anything. And this is the same type of challenge that if you are, let's say, just kind of a general contractor or a handyman, like I can kind of do some plumbing, I can kind of do some electrical, I can kind of do some sheetrock, I can kind of do some painting, I can kind of do this, I can kind of do that. Like you're okay at a lot of things, but you're not really great at any one thing. And so the analogy I always like to use is, you want to be the steakhouse and not the buffet. The steakhouse, not the buffet. Meaning, Josh, if you and I were going out for a good steak, we have a choice. We could go to a buffet where steak is one of 100 things that they offer, and they're all mediocre. Or you could go to a steakhouse where they do one thing, but they do that one thing really, really, really well, right? They don't do lasagna, they don't do tacos, they don't do pizza, they do steak. And so it's important for, as speakers, as communicators, and as business owners and entrepreneurs, that you are really good and you're really, really clear on, I solve one specific problem for one specific audience. So that's
So,
the S,
so,
selecting a problem to solve.
so let's just talk about that for a second because it's a really big deal. One of my favorite things to do is ask business owners what's the problem they solve.
Hmm.
They almost invariably tell me that it's the stuff they do, not the problem they solve.
Hmm.
So, Grant, I think that you're right on the money as far as people want to know what the problem is that you solve, because that's what they're interested in. They're not interested in how you do it. They're really interested more in the problem, and that you have the ability to do it, can help them get that problem solved. So you really need to be clear on the problem. Does that make
Absolutely.
sense?
Yeah. Like I'll give you another analogy. An example here is, let's say that God forbid you had some type of brain issue and you needed to have brain surgery. Like, you have a choice. You could go to your local family medical doctor. They are a doctor. They went to med school. They probably have performed a few surgeries before. They probably know more about the brain than you or I do, but they've never performed brain surgery. Like, I don't know about you. That's just probably not the person that I want cutting my head open, versus the person who is a brain surgeon day in and day out. That's all they do. That's their complete specialty. If you have a broken leg, you don't go to them. If you got a heart issue, you don't go to them. If you got COVID, you don't go to them. But if you got a brain issue, like, that's the person that you go to. And so again, it's counterintuitive, but the more narrow, the more focused we are, the easier it is to attract the right type of customer or client for you. So again, that's the S, selecting a problem to solve. The next part of the process, P, is to prepare your talk, to be really, really clear on what's the solution that you are providing. After that, then the E is to establish yourself as the expert. So, two key marketing assets that you need. Number one is you need a website, and number two is you need a demo video. Now, what exactly is a demo video? So, a demo video, think of it like a movie trailer. So, before anybody in this day and age is going to go see a movie, you want to see the trailer. And what exactly is the trailer? Well, they're going to take like a 2 hour movie, they're going to boil it down to 2 or 3 minutes. Within those 2 or 3 minutes, you have an idea of the plot, the theme, the genre, who's in it. And the goal of the demo video and the goal of the movie trailer is to make you want to see more. So it's important to have that, especially if you're wanting someone to hire you and to pay you, because you got to remember that an event planner is in the risk mitigation business. Meaning, if they're going to hire you, if they're going to put you up on stage, if they're going to hand you a microphone in front of their audience, they want to make sure that you are going to do a good job, that you're going to represent them well, that they're not going to be embarrassed by you, but you're going to deliver for the audience. The next part of the process, A, is to acquire paid speaking gigs. Now, this is the part that we want to fast forward to, but again, you got to have these other foundational pieces in place first and be really, really clear on those. And when we talk about acquiring paid speaking gigs, this is where we're being strategic in terms of reaching out, not just waiting on someone to magically find us, but not just reaching out, but having a plan in place, a system in place to follow up. This is where a lot of speakers drop the ball. And it's not just, okay, I have my website or my video, or I reached out to someone and said, hey, I know you got this, home builders trade show coming up. If you need a speaker, hope you think of me. But reaching out and being intentional about your follow-up. And then the last part of the process, K, is knowing when to scale. Meaning, a lot of people who are interested in speaking are also interested in perhaps writing a book or doing a course or doing coaching or consulting or doing training of some form. And you can do all those things, but you can't do all those things at once. So something's going to come first, something's going to come last. And I'll give you an example. There's a friend of mine here in the Nashville area, and he owns a auto repair shop and owns several locations of that. And so a few years ago, he started a coaching training program teaching other auto repair shop owners how to run and manage their business, both personally and professionally. And so that's an example of I've built the skill set doing this thing that I do, and now he does a lot of speaking, helping other shop owners with what it is that they are doing and helping them become more effective and efficient at what they're doing. So speaking can certainly lead to that and evolve to you basically teaching and selling and telling other people what's working for you in your business.
Yeah, that's been my experience. So a sizzle reel or your video that you're going to be
Mhm.
sending to bookers, how long should that be, and what should it look like?
Yeah, so I think ideally you want to keep it short. So think of it again like a movie trailer. A movie trailer's 2 minutes or so, because you want to think about this through the lens of the event planner, someone who's considering hiring you. Is they don't need to see a 30-minute video to determine if you're a good speaker, A, or B, if you're a good fit for their event. Maybe you're a great speaker, you're just not what they're looking for. So I recommend that you keep that short because also people's attention spans are very short. If someone were to send any one of us a YouTube video or something like, oh, you got to see this video. It's hilarious or it's interesting or I thought of you. Like the first thing every one of us do is we look in the lower corner there and we want to see how long is that video. And if it's a 12-minute video, like that's an eternity. Like most people aren't going to watch that. So keep it short. 2 to 3 minutes is plenty. And as far as the video itself, you can do this a couple different ways. One is that you could just have some clips, some of your best clips. Let's say you've done some speaking before and you gave a 30-minute presentation at a trade show. You again take your best 2 or 3 minutes and boil it down to that. Or if you've got one continuous long 2 or 3 minute block where it's like, hey, this is really really solid, this is a good representation of me speaking, maybe I'm sharing kind of an anecdote or a story or a stat, or maybe I can there's a clip of like the audience is really really engaged and it's just kind of a good summary of me speaking. You can just use that one chunk of time as well, but keeping it short, 2 or 3 minutes. I'd err on brevity for sure.
That makes sense. So how do you find gigs? I mean, I know there's like, um, you know, event planners and they hire speakers, but how do you find them and what kind of way should you approach them? Because I'm assuming they get approached a lot by
Sure.
people who want to speak.
Yeah, yeah, yes and no. And so I think this is where, again, the going back to the original thought of being really, really clear of who you speak to and what problem you solve. The mistake that some people make is, okay, I just want to speak to anybody and everybody, and so I'm not really clear what I'm looking for. But the analogy I like to use is like when I remember when I was in high school and one of my favorite days of the year was a snow day. And one, I got out of school, but two, me and another friend, we would go over to the rich neighborhood in town and we would go door to door and shovel driveways. And we would make hundreds of dollars, which was the equivalent of billions of dollars for a couple of teenage boys. And it was awesome. We loved it. We would come home with wads of cash. It was amazing. But the reason it worked is we went door to door and said, hey, there's a problem in your driveway right now, and we have the ability to make that problem disappear for you. Would you like to do that in exchange for 20 bucks or whatever it was? And so versus if we just like sat back and waited for someone to find us or waited for the phone to ring. So this is where, like, if you're an electrician, for example, and there are an electrician, well, first of all, getting clear on like what's the point of you speaking. So if it is, let's say you want to connect with other electricians in the area, if it is, in that case, there's going to be electrician associations or conferences, events, maybe trainings that you've been to, that you've been a part of, that perhaps you have attended, or groups that you are a part of. They are oftentimes bringing in outside speakers, and so reaching out to them. If it is something where you are wanting to use speaking for lead generation, then let's again kind of reverse engineer what are the ideal type of customers or clients for you. Is it going to be the end consumer, the home buyer that you are looking to work with? Is it going to be home builders that you are working with? So then you want to kind of think through, like, where are they? Where do they gather? What are the events, the conferences, the trade shows that they are a part of that you may want to attend or show up at? So again, some of this starts with like, what are your goals for speaking and being clear for that, and then thinking through not just who you speak to, what problem you solve, but then third, where do those people gather? What are the events that they are a part of?
And is there any place that you could go specifically to get a list of those people?
Google's really, really effective for this. And so what I would definitely encourage people to do and think about is the more specific, the more clear you are, the easier it is to find what you're looking for. The mistake that people will make is say, okay, I go to Google and I search for speaking events. Well, like you're going to get everything and nothing at the same time. So let's say let's go back to the electrician example, right? And you want to speak at some type of home builder trade show. What I would be doing then is I live here in the Nashville area. So I would search not just home builder association or home builder events or home builder conferences or home builder groups, but I'd search for those things, but I would also search all of those things and add on Nashville or add on Tennessee or add on Kentucky or Alabama or other areas where I may do work and I may want to consider trying to speak at those type of events. So the more specific you can be, if you're vague and generic in Google, you're going to get vague and generic answers. But if you're specific and clear, then you can start to find some more specific types of events that you'd probably be a good fit for.
So would it make sense once you understand who are the promoters of events that you did then go over to LinkedIn and try to get their name and contact information?
Yeah, certainly. Like LinkedIn can be very effective. Email works really well. What I would not recommend is that you just cold call people, because typically for an event planner, decision maker, if they're putting on let's go back to the trade show example, maybe they bring in a dozen different speakers on a couple different verticals and different niches. They may have 1,000 people coming to a trade show, in some cases several thousand people, and so picking a speaker and picking speakers is important, but it's one of thousands of moving pieces that they may have, and so they are typically not going to be thinking about speakers a ton up until the point that they do think about speaker, and then it's a week or two window that they're really thinking about it, reviewing speakers and making selection. So it's really what you want to do is you want to reach out to people before that they are in a decision making spot. If there's an annual trade show that they bring in speakers for, at some point they're going to be reviewing and considering speakers, and so you would rather reach out to someone too far out than too close in. Meaning, I'd rather reach out to the event planner for a trade show and have them say, hey, we're not going to start reviewing speakers for 3 months, versus them telling me, we just picked our speakers last week. Check back with us next year. Well, that sucks. And so that's where typically for the bigger the event is, the further out they're going to book speakers. Most events book speakers anywhere from 3 to 6 months out. Again, the bigger the event, the further out it's going to be, sometimes up to a year or more in advance. But if I found something, and let's say like right now we're recording this in February, I found I might be reaching out to stuff that's happening in the summer, perhaps stuff that's happening in the fall or early next year. What I don't want to be doing is it's late February and I'm reaching out for a trade show that happens the first weekend in March. Like they're pretty much locked and loaded at this point.
So I've decided I want to speak, and I have a general idea of who I'm going to want to speak to.
Mhm.
What about getting training? I mean, should you rehearse your talk? Should you have one talk? Should you have five talks? How important is coaching when it comes before you go out and you decide you want to become a speaker?
Yeah, I think a lot of it depends on how much how you want speaking to fit into the mix of what you're already doing. If you want speaking to be a big part of your lead generation or just kind of your branding and awareness within the community, then you want to make sure like you speaking becomes a bigger deal for you. Then you want to invest in that accordingly. But if it's something where it's like I'm going to do one or two things a year, maybe you may or may not necessarily feel like you need coaching for something like that. What I would say though is it's I would encourage anybody at any level, regardless of how much or how little speaking you're doing, to really take the time to practice and prepare. I think that a big mistake a lot of speakers make is people just I'm just going to hop up there and wing it. I'm just going to make it up. I'm going to shoot from the hip. I'm going to scribble some ideas on a napkin and hop up there and hope it all works out. Like that's just it's a lazy, sloppy approach. I don't advise that. Don't recommend that. It's not fair to the audience either. So I think really take the time to practice, to think through what you want to communicate. And so even if it's something that you intimately know well, really taking the time to think it through is going to help make the presentation better. So for example, if Josh, you asked me, tell me, Grant, about when you proposed to your wife. Well, I mean, I can tell you that story. I was there, I lived it, I experienced it. I could tell that off the top of my head. But if I took half an hour and really just sat down and scribbled some notes and ideas and thoughts, and like, okay, what was the day like? What was the weather? What led up to that? What did we say to each other? Who did we call afterwards? What was her reaction? Like all of that, and I really put some effort and energy into it. I could probably tell the story better. versus just kind of winging it. So I think really taking the time to practice and prepare is something that any speaker at any level can really do that makes them a better speaker.
And one thing I've learned is that the shorter the speech is, the more preparation you have to do,
Yeah,
which I
this is
know is
true.
I know is counterintuitive. But the first time I did a TED style talk, I was a disaster because I did my normal prep I do for a 1 hour talk.
Yeah,
And in 20 minutes, you just can't, you have to really practice that over and over and over. So when
yep.
you get out there, you have to kill it from the second you start talking.
Yeah, you can't waste any time up there for sure. You got to get right into it.
At least that's been my experience along the way.
Yeah.
So, what we have time for one more topic. So let's talk about the getting paid part. Okay, I want to
Mhm.
go out. I'm going to do some speaking. I've got a very successful electrical contracting business, and I am at the point where I actually have some time to help some other electrical contractors speak. So I'm going to go out, and I've got a methodology that takes 30% out of the cost of doing the job, and I
Mhm.
have a way to talk about it. I'm going to go out. I want to talk on a national basis. I want to talk at trade shows to other
Mhm.
electrical contractors. What can I expect to get paid, and how do I go about getting paid?
Yeah, so there's a lot of factors that go into this. So I'll give you a couple of different answers. One is the answer as far as like how much should I charge as a speaker? Well, the answer is it depends, and it depends on a variety of factors. It's gonna depend on your industry. You can charge more in some industries versus others. It's gonna depend on your marketing assets. We talked about your website, your demo video earlier. Whether we like it or not, people judge books by their cover, and so you want to make sure that your stuff looks sharp, it looks professional. So an event planner is not looking at your information in isolation or in a vacuum. They're looking at you compared to two or three or four or five other speakers who are doing something similar. So you want to make sure that your stuff looks professional and sharp. Another variable and factor is just going to be your experience. If you're a brand new speaker just getting started, you're probably not as good of a speaker as someone who's been doing this for several years and has more experience than you. So there's a couple of factors there. We do have a free speaking fee calculator on our website if people are interested in checking out. You can go directly to myspeakerfee.com. Myspeakerfee.com. It's totally free. Answer about 10 questions or so. It'll spit out a number for you at the bottom of what you should be charging as a speaker. Now, again, speaking fees is much more of an art than a science, but that's going to at least get you in the ballpark. Now, for the sake of this audience, one of the things I would say as something to consider or think about is that sometimes there's this misconception that speaking for free is a bad thing. And I would say speaking for free is okay as long as you know why you're doing it. You are providing something of value as a speaker, and you need to receive something of value in exchange. So, in this case, let's say that you are going to speak and you're an electrician, you're speaking to other electricians, you're doing some coaching or training on this, and you go and you speak and you pick up, 5 new clients who want to hire you or consulting projects and say, hey, can you consult or coach me or help me with my electrical business in a different state? I'm non-competitor, but help me. Like, you may not get paid anything for the actual speaking engagement, but if you generate business out of it, then you received something of value that may not have shown up on a paycheck. So I think there's a big misconception there that speaking for free is always a negative thing, when in reality, speaking for lead generation can be really, really lucrative.
Yeah, I've done that a bunch, and it's worked out well for me. So, Grant, unfortunately, we are out of time. So, you are obviously a pro at this. How would our listeners find you? And if they wanted to do business with you, what would they have to do?
Yeah, everything we do is over at thespeakerlab.com, thespeakerlab.com. I mentioned the myspeakerfee.com. That's a good site to check out as well. But if you listen to this podcast, you probably listen to other podcasts. So we have a podcast by the same name, the Speaker Lab Podcast. We got over 400 episodes there on all topics about speaking. So definitely check that out. But yeah, anything we can do to help support you wherever you're at in your speaking journey, we're happy to help.
Great. And I've got two things I want you to do. One is I've asked this 394 times now, I think, which is go to wherever you're listening to this podcast and give us an honest rating and review. It's really important. It really helps people find us. If you love us, you can give us 5 stars. If you hate us, well, I'll cry a little bit, but I'll get over it. And the second thing is I've been working on this program called the Financial Freedom Project. And I've been doing this for about 10 years. And essentially, it's how do you become financially free from your business? First thing we do is we say, where are you on the success path towards becoming financially free from your business? And for most of us, we're not even close. So once we figure out where we are and understand we're not even close, you need to know what to do, what strategies to pursue that will get you to financial freedom. I used to charge $5,000 for this. And I found some technology that let me take about 80% out of the time it takes me to do the project. So I've given all that savings to you. I've lowered the price to $997. It's easy to learn more about it. You just go to www.sustainablebusiness.co/financial freedom. That's www.sustainablebusiness.co/financial freedom. And you can either buy the program there or sign up to have a short conversation with me to find out if it's right for you. And this is Josh Patrick, and we're with, and I'm all over the place, so I'm all over the place. So I'm sorry about that. Oh, this is really embarrassing. This is really embarrassing. I am really sorry. We were with Grant Baldwin, and God, I was in the hospital this morning, and I apologize, Grant, but with Grant Baldwin from the Speaker Lab, he was a great guest. I hope you go and check out his stuff, and come back and see us soon. Thanks a lot. Oh, what a